morning, you guys. Good morning. And I am with Stephanie Fernandez. She is an RTT practitioner and a parent coach. So today we have the pleasure of having you with us. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And thank you for being with us, Stephanie.
Hi, Bettina. Good morning. And thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to share what I know with you. And I hope that some of the things I talk about land with you guys.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm Stephanie. I have two small kids, 5 and 3, and I live in Scandinavia with them. We live here as an expat couple, as an expat family. And I am an RTT practitioner, as you already said in the introduction, and that might sound a bit clunky for those of you who are not familiar with the term. I'm someone that works with the subconscious mind. I'm a hypnotherapist that uses the subconscious mind to heal childhood wounds, childhood trauma. And I think that works so well in connection with being a parent coach is because we know, and you probably also see that, Tina, in your work, is that a lot of the interactions we have with our kids are driven by our beliefs that we create from very early childhood, by seeing how our parents interacted with us, by feeling really how their actions and responses and reactions did impact us. And this is how we were shaped as humans. And then we become parents, and often we're not aware of what is actually running in the background of our brain. What is it that triggers me so much when my child does not eat at the table with us? What is it actually? And with RTT, we go there and figure out what it is actually. And often it's not the child. It's something that has not been healed. It's a trigger that shows us where we just need to pay a little more attention to become softer in our parenting for more peace at home.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's a lot. That's going all the way back, right?
Yeah.
Which is good though, right? At least because that way we know, like, okay, because there's a lot of people that are like, they just, they react, right? It's reactive parenting instead of proactive parenting, but it's like, why am I reacting that way? And that's the question. So like, where do parents get it wrong most often, do you think?
I think a lot of parents have super high expectations towards this whole parenting thing. You become a parent and you have these huge expectations that now your life is fulfilled. Now this is what I wanted for such a long time. And all of a sudden reality hits you and you were not, nobody can really be prepared. Not first time parents, but then you have a second one and you think, oh, I got this. But the second one is also very different than the first one. So expectations are really often on the way for seeing opportunities and the situations for what they are. And we want to be, those perfect parents. We want to do everything right, especially if we grew up in a family that was rather dysfunctional. We think, I will never do this. I don't want to do this. I want to do this right. There's so much pressure by doing this right. All you need is to be authentic and vulnerable and be able, learn a few tools how to repair after you lost your self.
Your entire shit. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that's also showing your child that you are just human, but you need those tools. So just adjust your expectations, tune into your feminine softness as a mother, and help, maybe with the help of someone. It doesn't need to be a therapist or a coach, but often just talking to a friend helps already to get some perspective. We often think all these moms at the school drop-off, they look so well put together. I just barely brushed my teeth this morning and I didn't sleep and I don't feel I have myself together, but nobody feels we have everything together. So it's this comparison that we as parents we fall in the trap and we think, I just need to do better and need to do more. It just creates much more pressure.
Yeah. And then when we have all that pressure, then it's like we end up putting that onto the kids too, right? To be, have all straight A's or, be the perfect gymnast or ballerina or football player or whatever else. Okay.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit more about the rules of the mind and why they're important in parenting?
Yeah, this is very specific to the work I do as an RTT practitioner. So
Mhm.
the work as a parent coach is really to give you tools and understand what you can do in specific moments.
Right.
And then the work I do as an RTT practitioner is to understand yourself, your own mind, and how your mind works. And I specifically work with 3 rules of the mind. And the first one is every thought we have or any idea we have causes a physical reaction. The trouble is that 95% of our thoughts are subconscious thoughts. We are not aware of them. They just pop into our mind, in our subconscious mind, and they do create some sort of feeling in our body. A very simple exercise that we can do is if you close your eyes and you think of a big, fat, juicy lemon, and you think of how you cut that lemon and you squeeze the juice and you lick the lemon and you just feel that your taste buds exploding. And I'm sure like all of us had already saliva now in our mouth. This is the reaction that our body has towards our thoughts. And if you have negative thoughts, my child is so misbehaved, my child is so ungrateful, that creates a physical response in your body. And often it's not a good one because it's a belief about your child that is very negative. And what we want is that you are open. What we want is that you can receive your child for what they are, so that you see the unmet need that is most often behind the unwanted behavior. The second rule of the mind is that our mind responds to 2 things: the pictures we make in our head and the words we say to ourselves. And I grew up with a mom who talked a lot, very subconsciously, just a lot of talking. All these bobby pins around. I'm tired of all these bobby pins. I'm tired of, tidying up after you guys. I'm just doing the laundry and the dishes. And there was a lot of unconscious talking around our house. And I know that she was overwhelmed and just overworked. So I have like full empathy for her. But now that I work with the mind, I know that all the words we say to ourselves is like self-fulfilling prophecy. We just see these things. We tend not to see the other things, the good things. So if I step on a Lego at night, after I put the kids down and I walk through the house and tied up the Legos and all the toys, and I step on a Lego and that damn hurts. Like it's really painful. There are little grenades on the floor. And I have 2 choices. I can think, these toys, they kill me. My mind says, whoa, there is danger here. It's really dangerous. Like my mind goes in the spiral subconsciously, creating this anxious feeling, the anger, like really resenting my kids for leaving the toys around. Or I have a chance and say, okay, tomorrow we'll implement a rule. 10 minutes before bedtime, we all walk through the house, everyone gets a little basket, and we pick up things from the floor. It doesn't need to be perfect, but just picking up things from the floor. And if my mind receives a solution, there's much more hope, and I don't enter in that spiral. And then the last one is, which is my absolute favorite, the mind loves what is familiar and rejects what is unfamiliar. So if you're new to conscious parenting or gentle parenting and you need a paradigm shift in your mind, but also in your family, kids are used to how we show up every day. If yelling and being loud is the default communication, and all of a sudden you move into gentle parenting, more solution focused communication, kids will go like, this is not familiar. No, I don't like this, even though it's nicer, but it's not familiar. So they get very confused, and our mind gets also confused. So we just need to repeat it over and over again. So don't despair if you don't see immediate changes. It takes about 3 weeks to have really settled a new way of communicating, a new familiar pattern in your family.
And so when you're more in the solution oriented of parenting, right? You're more in the communicative, like collaborative, like you were saying, okay, we're all going to be picking up this. It's not like I'm going to go pick up the Legos after my kids, right? Okay, we'll all do the 10-minute because it'll be something we'll do as a family. And then after that, if somebody's still stepping on a Lego, well, tomorrow we just have to be more thorough instead of, oh, because I know those Legos hurt. I've stepped on a few Legos and they're not pleasant.
No.
They're not pleasant to step on at all. Yeah. I think we've all had some Legos. We can all relate to that. What do you do when we get triggered by our children? Like, what do we do? What can we do? And like, why is it that we're often, because I think that sometimes when we get triggered by our children, it's not like we really know like why that triggered us, or it's also not really the kids. It's just like something that was said or done, right? It's not like that kid, triggered me on purpose, right?
Yeah.
So what can we do with that?
I would like to say to look at the triggers as our guides. And yes, even if we don't know immediately what that trigger means or why it is there, write it down, because you are probably as surprised as your child is. And I have one example that just happened yesterday, and I'm already very aware as a parent and very conscious, but I still have those triggers because our kids also just grow up and then they have different behaviors that trigger us. Whereas before, certain stages are just easier for certain people. The
Right.
infant stage is very easy for me, but for my husband, the infant stage was like the worst, all the crying without like being really able to reason and, consolidate. It's just not possible. You have this little bundle that cries at the witching hour for 3 hours. So that was very hard for him. And if crying triggers you, there is somewhere along your upbringing noise that was very difficult to handle, or you cried yourself and you just didn't have space to let it out. You had to suppress it. Yesterday, when my 5-year-old went for shower, and my husband helped him, and they did a little game in the shower. And my husband is such a goofy guy. He loves to constantly joke with the kids, and he's really good in playful parenting. It comes very natural. But my son was very tired. He didn't really want to. And then they did this game in the shower, and he fell because he was not up for it. And there was like a huge fight in it. Like, you did this, I said stop, you didn't stop, da, 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 da. And this thing that my husband has of not stopping the play immediately triggers me like crazy. And then at first I thought, what is happening? Like, I got up, like I sent him out of the bathroom. I said, you are not staying here. When he says stop, it's stop. You need to acknowledge his stop and respect that. It's his boundaries, even though he's only 5, but it's so important. And I thought, why did it actually trigger me so much? I mean, yes, I don't want my child to get hurt in the shower, but after I journaled on it, so I sat down, I wrote what happened. And then after around 7 minutes, when you write down just whatever comes up, nobody needs to read this, your thoughts actually start popping up from the subconscious mind. And when I was little, my voice didn't count. So when I said stop, nobody stopped. When I said, I don't want this, you're hurting me, the tickling, I don't like this, nobody stopped. They would just continue doing it because they thought it was funny. I peed my pants, I was embarrassed. I didn't want to laugh, forced laughing. So when that happened yesterday, I was immediately taken back to when I was 5. It was not me as a 30-year-old mom setting boundaries for my son. I was actually very reactive. So when we experience a trigger, no matter what it is really helpful to look into your past, to think, when actually did I experience something similar that happened to me when I was at the receiving end and not at the giving end? And often we are just repeating patterns because we didn't learn how else to do it. We didn't learn how to communicate. Especially girls didn't find their voice because we were taught not to speak up. Don't be so bossy. Don't be so loud. Be sweet and small and silent. And then when our kids say things to us that remind us, of disrespect, of feeling insignificant, not really being able to set our boundaries, kids don't have boundaries, really. They want to be close. Like if they could, they crawl back into our tummy. So if we don't have those boundaries with our kids, and if we're not aware of it, then we just explode. And these are triggers that really help us to guide us back to what needs to be healed and what can be healed. Doesn't need much often. Awareness already is a great, great step.
Awesome. So when you have parents, because we have a lot of parents listening and a lot of parents that are trying to like, because we had COVID, everybody had COVID. I mean, not that they had COVID, but we all had like a shutdown. We all had, we had to kind of adjust with that. And then there's a lot of kids that and parents, that had a difficult time with that. And then a lot of things came to the surface, for parents and children, and families in general, that, that were there prior to COVID, but just really like came out strong because of the shutdown and because of just being together all the time and being stuck inside for a lot of people. What kind of things what can you tell us, or what would be really good for parents that are struggling with, that connection and communication and filling and finding all the things that, because a lot of times when you're like, oh my God, I have all this stuff that's unhealed, how can I be working on me and still be a good parent for my child? It's like super overwhelming a lot of times.
Yeah.
Especially for those people that are trying or want to take the step, because even though it's a little step to just want to, it feels huge because you don't know what you're going to, like what avalanche is going to come on to you, right? So what kind of what can parents do that's like small but significant, that's not going to feel like it's so much, and that they're still able to be a good, parent, to their parents' children?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. And I just want to acknowledge that it's the hardest to reparent yourself and to parent your kids, especially when you are in an environment and a situation like COVID, where you have to do everything by yourself. Like you're homeschooling and you're working from home and you do the household, and at the same time you should be able to find moments for yourself. And we all know how important self-care is. So it's incredibly difficult. And I think the time since COVID really has shown how much burden there is on mothers. So I really want to acknowledge that, and and just sending you love for that. What you can do, I think what's very powerful, is when you have troubles with connecting with your child, or you feel like you are hitting a wall and you're not really reaching them, and there's a lot of dynamics that are a bit out of balance, ask yourself and ask your child, what else could this mean, this behavior? So asking yourself, because the first thing we see is that the reactive behavior of the child or my own. When we get curious and taking a step back and thinking, okay, is this really about dinner? Is this really about breakfast here, or the red socks, or the blue cup, or is there something else? And often it's something else. Often it's your child is experiencing also that lack of connection. One-on-one time for 10 minutes a day helps already to fill their cup. And that doesn't need to be fancy. You just sit maybe 10 minutes at the couch and watch TV together and talk with your child what you watch. Hold them close. And if you have energy, draw something together with them. Do what they like. Our children are so often like caught up in stuff that, is just part of life, of course. The schoolwork, the extracurricular activities, there's a lack of autonomy on kids these days. Just free play, just being able to not really have a schedule for at least some time of the day. Just let them explore, let them be bored. It's fine to be bored. What could we do? What would you do? Ask your child questions like, what do you think this could mean? What would you like to do? What is your opinion? what do you think this could mean? Like, what do you think this could mean is so powerful for kids, because it shows them, oh, she's actually interested in me. It takes a lot of the negative energy that comes just from screaming attention, screaming connection. And you don't even need to buy anything, pay for anything. It is really the tuning in, being present, and you don't have to be present 24/7. You don't have to. For every one negative interaction you have with your child, that is a conflict, that is if you scolded them, that is whatever negative experience it could be, you have 5 good ones. And the good one is already stroking their hair while you pass them by. Give them a kiss when you sit at the table. Just hold their hand and say, I'm so glad we can have dinner together. That is a positive experience. It doesn't need to be wow or big. I think if I can give one advice, is focus on the small things and the small steps. And you're learning along the way, and tell that to your child. Like I tell my son all the time, I'm learning this. I'm new to this because I didn't learn it when I grew up. I want you to learn it. That's why I'm so open with you. And he's 5 and he does understand, and kids do understand. I want my child not to be responsible for my emotions, but I need to explain him what happened. Like mommy yelled because she's overwhelmed, because I didn't get out today, because I didn't have even 10 minutes to go to the bathroom. If you can communicate that from an I perspective, that really, really helps. So these are small steps, and I hope that they are useful for you.
For sure, 100%. I know there's a lot watching that. I know that, that have done it and have signed up for the summit through me from just the parent emails that I have. And one of the questions that, that the one I just asked you was one of the questions that, they ask me a lot. So, and I like to give, obviously I have my answer to that question, and I like to give various answers to that question because it's not the same for everyone, and it depends on the situation, and it also depends on the age of the child, and also like your personality, right? So certain things that, like, I know, for example, there's 3 parents right now that are listening to you that are like, yes, everything you just said, I'm going to start right away. And the reason that I know that is because we've been talking about it for a while, and I was actually telling them, you got to wait a little bit because I'm going to be asking you this question. So anyway, so one of the things I wanted to also talk about with the being open and talking with your kids, because that is super important, like not just talking at them, but talking with them, like, and asking a question that's not necessarily yes or no. It's like they have to think about it, right? Like when you're asking, like, what else could this mean? Now they have to stop. They have to think about what just happened, the interaction or the situation that just happened. Then they have to think about like how they responded, or and now it's like a whole thought process that has to happen, and then they're able to give you some kind of, even if it doesn't make sense, it's something in their mind that they can give you that they thought was going on or whatever, and sometimes with little ones, it's not always the most perfect or the most, sensical conversation or explanation, but at least you could see where their head is and what they're thinking, right? And how they're thinking, because that is going to go a long way in understanding. Because like I said, I've been a teacher for over 10 years. And one of the things that I always tell my students is, when you're solving a problem, or when you're trying to answer a question, or when you're doing all of these things, like start thinking about it and writing it down, because at least then I can see like where are you good, and then where is it that there's a misunderstanding, or maybe like there's a vocabulary word that you're not having the right meaning of, but we can pinpoint where that is. And so with that kind of communication, I guess we can also do the same thing when we're dealing with or trying to change our mindset and our mind shift. Now let's talk about the RTT thing. Now, if somebody was and they said, okay, Stephanie, I am a hot mess. I know there's a lot of stuff going on in here. So how would that work? Like, would they do sessions, or is that like I know it's not a one-time thing, but is it like an ongoing thing? Do you work on like one specific area, or like, how does that work? Can you tell us?
Yeah. So if you, for example, say, I yell way too much, I don't want this anymore, I want to get rid of it, then we have a session on the yelling. Where does it come from? And then you work with me for 4 weeks with follow-ups. You get a recording, like a meditation recording. It's very linked also to regulate your nervous system when you feel dysregulated. And we can work on one issue at a time. So it's very specific. So we say 4 weeks, we work on the yelling, on the anger. And then oftentimes we have so much guilt as parents. Then we have another month where we focus on the guilt. And this is how we go from there. I usually start with 1 month because issues are layered. And especially when you do therapy work with the subconscious mind, there's a lot of stuff that you were not aware of before. So when you think, actually, I'm very angry, underneath that anger is probably a lot of sadness and hurt. And that can be overwhelming because you were not aware. The anger was a protection from your mind to not feel the hurt because it was just too overwhelming as a child. You couldn't deal with it. So what happened is that you built this hard shell around you, and everyone that tries to penetrate that, you would just go like, no way, I'm here protecting myself. So sometimes it takes a few sessions to really soften up because it's been years and decades, like often it's decades of behavior that just needs to shift. And we're doing this very gently. Yeah, so we have sessions, we have follow-up calls. You receive a guided meditation that you listen every day to really change your subconscious mind. We work with neuroplasticity, like how our immediate reactions in the brain fire. Like you can think of that as in a forest, you have a path that you walk for 30 years, the same path, and you can see that path. It's the only path you see. And with RTT, we go a new one. You don't see it yet, but it's there. But we have to walk it a few times, actually 21 days, so that your mind starts seeing, okay, when I'm on a crossroad, I'm not going this way because this is where I yell, I go this way. So it just takes repetition. Yeah.
Awesome. And just so you know, guys, in the email that you get with the recording, there's ways to get in touch with her because that is her specialty, right? I'm not going to work with you on that. But I think that that's amazing. What kind of, I mean, and I guess this is a general question because I guess it just depends on the situation, the circumstance, right? You said you start out with a month. What's like generally a good, time frame to work on these things?
So ideally, you don't have a move ahead of you or a huge change, like a new baby coming in that month, or
right.
Starting school, like some big life-changing things. I suggest always to wait for after these things happen, and then we can look into it. Because otherwise it's just too much. You need time for that, and you need headspace for that, and your family always comes first, so they need to be settled, they need to be well, and then you can focus on yourself.
Awesome. Okay, well, I know that everybody here learned a lot. If there is anything that you could, or one thing or maybe two that you can leave our parents with today, what would it be?
Acknowledge that there is more than one truth. What is true for you is not true for your child, and it's not true for the husband or the sibling or your own parents. If you can acknowledge that everyone sees reality through their own lens, from experience, from personality, from how we are currently in which state we are currently in, that just takes out the pressure of just wanting to be right. And we often find ourselves in this, power over attitude with our kids. You do what I tell you because I'm the parent. There's often so much more than just one truth. So if I can invite you to look at your child and think, what is your truth? And how can we find an agreement, or, maybe middle ground together? That is very helpful.
That's so awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for being with us. Thank you, Stephanie. I know you guys are gonna, this is gonna be something that I think you should probably watch more than once and kind of listen and maybe journal or jot down, some things that stood out for you with that, and see how you can connect it with your own family. So definitely thank you so much, Stephanie, for being with us.
Thank you so much.